Charlie XCX is having a spectacular meltdown. Sweden has a serial killer, and a 68-year-old man is trying to dig his own grave, literally. I'm Varun Kaushik, and this is The Screen Verdict, where this week we look at stories of fame, murder, madness, and everything that can go gloriously wrong in between. Let's dive right in with our first review. Before he was Anthony Bourdain, the culinary world's original rock star, he was simply Tony, a cocky, directionless 19-year-old with barely any money, a failed writing ambition, and a talent for talking his way out of his problems. Matt Johnson's Tony goes back to that formative summer in 1975 when Tony lands in a Provincetown kitchen run by a once acclaimed Brazilian chef, played by Antonio Banderas. It's not exactly an earth-shattering chapter in isolation, but hindsight gives it meat and meaning. Under the right mentor, the callow teenager slowly discovers a career and perhaps the beginnings of the greatness that would follow. Dominic Sessa creams it as the pliable yet arrogant young Bourdain, while Banderas brings warmth to the disciplinarian who becomes his ideal. The film remains light-hearted and entertaining throughout, with picturesque cinematography, but wisely never pretends this Tony has already become the Anthony Bourdain we all know. It might not cook up a Bourdain-sized feat, but there's enough meat on the bone here to serve up 3 stars. On to our next review. Yet another crime thriller in the OTT space, but thankfully, without the feeling of déjà vu or excessive familiarity this time. Swedish series Blood Sacrifice takes us beyond the blood-soaked killings on Stockholm streets and into the minds of the policemen themselves, asking what happens when those whose job is to provide security become the victims themselves. The 5-part Netflix series opens with the macabre killing of 2 police officers, murdered through fake distress calls in a ritualistic pattern. Detective Thomas Berg is left chasing a killer whose motives remain elusive, while the story gradually becomes as much a psychological study as a thriller. Now, what gives the series its heart is the love-hate relationship between Thomas and his beleaguered father, an ex-cop with an inglorious record. As the circle of suspicion narrows, the mystery deepens, and the line between heroes and villains begins to blur. Even those on the right side of the law are forced to confront moral dilemmas and the danger of crossing their own ethical lines. Beautifully shot and packed with a haunting score, Blood Sacrifice maintains a taut pace, without ever resorting to gratuitous sex or gore. It digs into the lives and the pressures of the police personnel, while tapping into fissures within the Swedish system that ultimately speak to universal emotions. This intriguing noir may be about severed heads and ritualistic sacrifice, but it has plenty of body, heart, and soul. A solid 3-star affair. On to our next review. Charlie XCX, cocaine, and the spectacular implosion of Brat. The moment is what happens when a pop star gets swallowed by the phenomenon she created. Charlie's mockumentary begins in the aftermath of the cultural explosion that was her album Brat, as the deliberately simple green cover, a lowercase b, an abrasive club pop aesthetic turned into a meme, a mood, a fashion statement, and eventually an entire lifestyle. Now she's preparing for her tour while her record label tries to squeeze every last drop out of that phenomenon, including humiliating sponsored content and a concert film that wants to make the club rat more palatable and sanitized. And there is nowhere to hide, not even behind the 4th wall. Charlie plays herself as insecure, vain, confused, and ridiculous, punctuating almost every dialogue with the word babe, while the yes men around her swarm. Jamie Demetriou is wonderfully slippery as a manager, while Rosanna Arquette's executive wants a pound of flesh. And Haley Benton Gates is magnificent as the creative director fighting to protect Charlie's vision. But it is Alexander Skarsgård who steals the show as the insufferable director trying to make Brat shinier and safer, performing the role as mansplaining incarnate. The film itself looks like a panic attack with a production budget. There's strobing lights, cigarette and vape smoke, invasive close-ups, restless camera work, flashing graphics, and real-world footage that all collide in a deliberate sensory assault. Brat was the cultural explosion. The moment is the morning after. Raw, feral, and gloriously subversive, it earns 4 stars. On to our next review. What do you get when a 68-year-old man is stubborn enough to dig his own grave? Literally. Pallaburusu turns loneliness, family friction, and financial misery into a surprisingly sunny spree of tragicomic glee. Uday Chauhan's directorial debut follows Shambhu Guddappa, played beautifully by Sudhakar Reddy, a self-righteous old man at war with his son, alienated from his friends, and eventually not even invited to his own granddaughter's wedding. Enter Ravi, an optimistic young village barber who reminds him that an invitation is hardly necessary and even gets him a shiny new kurta. The film's great trick is finding humor without making light of misery. A seemingly silly brouhaha over a toothbrush grows organically into a story of estrangement and loneliness, while Reddy embodies desolation even in a crowd. He is heartbreaking in the courtroom, admitting that he hasn't had a decent meal since his wife died, and equally funny in his self-righteousness as he tries to rationalize digging his own grave as proof of his abject loneliness. The film never really tells you what to feel. It simply lets you enter Shambhu's desolate world and find your own way through it. With a serene score, quietly authoritative cinematography, and supple editing, Pallaburusu manages the rare feat of making even the clouds look sunlit. A moving 3.5 stars. That's all from me on this week's The Screen Verdict. If you enjoyed it, like, share, subscribe, and follow. And for the complete reviews, head to the movie review section of tribuneindia.com. Until next time, binge responsibly.